Hello, it's Jeta, and today I thought I would give you some tips and advice for picking your GCSEs and A-levels. I know that this decision is coming up for a lot of you, and thinking back to when I had to make those decisions, it was just such a stressful and daunting experience. So if I can kind of impart some wisdom, then I thought I would kind of collate all the things that you should consider when making your decision. I'm going to break up the video into two parts, firstly talking about picking your GCSEs and then picking your A-levels, just because even though they are very similar, at the same time there are quite a few key differences, which means that some of the things that you're going to have to think about when making your decision are going to alter slightly. I think the first thing to think about is your future. So is there kind of a career path that you really want to take? So for example, if you know what degree you want to do at uni, or even what A-levels you want to do after taking your GCSEs, because there are certain degrees and A-levels which require you to have taken a certain GCSE. So for example, if you want to do history A-level, then obviously take history GCSE, or if you want to do languages for a degree, then obviously take a language at GCSE. But this only applies to if you kind of know what you want to do in the future. I think for most of us, we have no idea at that point what we want to do. I mean, I had no clue what I wanted to do in my future at that age. So I think this only applies to if you know what you want to do. The second tip is probably the most important thing to consider when choosing your GCSEs, and that is to pick subjects that you enjoy. You are going to be spending the next 2 years of your life on these subjects, and if you don't enjoy them, it's just going to be a horrible experience for you. I think enjoyment is definitely the most important thing when deciding your GCSEs, because you are more likely to put in more effort and work into the subjects that you enjoy, and so you're probably going to do better in them anyway because of this. However, the fourth thing is to also bear in mind choosing subjects that you are good at. GCSEs are really hard, and if you are struggling with a subject on top of that, it is just going to make your whole experience really unenjoyable. Ultimately, you do want to do well in your GCSEs, so picking subjects that you are good at or just get good grades in will kind of increase the chances that you will do well at GCSEs as well. Also, another thing to note though is do not pick subjects that you just think are going to be easy, because there are no easy subjects at GCSE. They're just different from each other. For example, in my year, a lot of people chose drama because they just thought it would be kind of like an easy A-level. That isn't true. Yes, the written exam is a lot more simplistic than, say, chemistry, but there is so much work that goes into drama because it's a coursework subject. So it's not that it was easier, it's just different from your other subjects. It was by no means kind of less work than the other subjects. So yeah, do not make the mistake of kind of choosing a subject you think is just going to be a bit easier. There are no easy subjects at GCSE. Focus on what you are good at instead. The fifth thing is to speak to your teachers. They know you, and listen to what they think that you should do and any advice that they might have. Obviously, don't weigh your decision on everything they say, but do take it into consideration. If a teacher thinks that you are going to do really well in a subject, then they're probably right. However, I do think maybe take anything that they say to you with a pinch of salt, because teachers are very likely to advertise their subject. And so every teacher is going to want you to do their subject. That's what happened to me. Every teacher I spoke to wanted me to do their subject, and obviously that isn't helpful. It just makes it even worse when you're picking your decision. But I do think that they still might have some useful advice for you that you might not have thought of before. So also listen to what they have to say as well. And then the last thing to think about, and this really should be the smallest part of your decision making, but consider which teachers you might get for certain subjects. So think about your departments at school and which teachers could potentially teach you at GCSE, because even though this is really the last thing to think about, but the teacher that you have for a subject can affect your enjoyment of that subject. And this could be dependent on their teaching style, the way you learn, if you kind of get along with them. But I think it can have an impact on your learning, so it's still worth bearing in mind. However, I do think that is the kind of last thing to consider when making your choices. So now advice for picking your A-levels. I think the first thing to think about is your career path. If you know what you want to do at uni, then you need to think about if there are any subjects that you need to study at A-level. And to do this, have a look at the entry requirements on the university websites. For example, if you want to do medicine, then obviously you need to take biology and chemistry at A-level. Or alternatively, there are subjects at uni where there are no specific subject requirements at A-level, but the unis do have preferences of what A-levels you might take. So for example, I think if you want to do law at uni, they kind of prefer that you take either history or English. So also consider what they kind of prefer that you take as well. But this is only applicable if you know what you want to do in the future, and obviously not everyone knows what they want to do. So that leads me on to the next tip, which is, especially if you don't know what you want to do in the future, keep your options open. And a way of doing that is to consider taking facilitating subjects. So these are subjects which universities consider more favourable or like academic, and these consist of maths, English literature, the sciences, so biology, chemistry and physics. Psychology isn't included in this. History, geography and languages, and I think potentially R.S. I'm not 100% sure, but you can have a look at which subjects are facilitating subjects online as well. I think universities recommend that you take 2 facilitating subjects and 1 non-facilitating subject, but you should only do this if you want to go to a more prestigious university or for example, a more competitive course. And if you want to do something more creative in your future, let's say art, then obviously you can just ignore the facilitating subjects. It's more just if you're really uncertain about what you want to do in the future, it can just broaden your options. When it does come to making that decision, it means that you have a kind of larger variety of opportunities to go down different pathways. So then the third thing to consider is taking subjects that you are good at. So firstly, making sure that your GCSE grades meet the grade requirements for that A-level, or at least that you're very likely to meet the grade requirements and are on track to getting the grade that you need. So I think in my school, to do maths A-level, you needed a 7, which is pretty high. But then for other subjects, for example, I think English, you only needed a 5, I believe. So I think it does vary from school to school, but mostly they are the same. And then secondly, that you have a natural ability for the subjects, because A-levels are really, really hard. I mean, honestly, I think just juggling that much content is already so difficult to do. And if you're struggling with it on top of that, it will just make it impossible for you. And it means that you're probably very unlikely to get good grades. So that's why it's a good idea to also take into consideration your kind of aptitude for that subject as well. But then the next thing to think about is your enjoyments of the subject. It's no good being really, really good at a subject if you really hate it, because obviously that's just pointless to do. But as you can see, differing to GCSEs, I think at A-levels, you should put your aptitude for a subject above your enjoyment. Just because even if you love your subject, if you're really struggling, I think your enjoyment is just going to go along with it, because you're just going to make your life so much harder. But nevertheless, enjoyment is still incredibly important. So obviously that has to have a play in your decisions. Then the fifth thing is to look into the courses and know what you're going to be taught. And you should do this for your GCSE options as well. But it's especially important at A-level you might love a subject, but you might not love the topics that are taught at your school. Not only will you be more prepared for starting your A-levels, but knowing the course means that you kind of also know and can predict whether you will actually like the next 2 years of your subject. The next thing to also think about is whether your subjects go well together. So do your A-levels complement each other? For example, for me, I do history and English literature. They are both essay subjects, so I find that when I'm developing my essay writing in one, my essay writing in the other also improves. But also there are some really weird links between subjects. For example, in psychology, we are currently looking at social influences, so compliance, conformity and obedience. And it's actually really linked with my history GCSE course because we looked at Weimar and Nazi Germany. And now in psychology, we're also looking at Nazi Germany and the soldiers in the Nazi regime and why they actually did obey some of the horrific orders that they were made to do. So there will definitely be links between subjects that you didn't even expect there to be links with, but just generally having your A-levels complement each other means that you just are building a stronger foundation for your learning in preparation for going on to further education or apprenticeships or whatever it may be that you do after sixth form. The seventh piece of advice I would give is to ignore your parents when picking A-levels because it's your future. Obviously, it's important to listen to as many different people as possible to get advice from a wide range of sources. However, when it comes to making the final decision, it should be you and only you who is making these decisions because it is your future ultimately, and you shouldn't let anyone pressure you into choosing an A-level that you are not sure about because you will regret it and it's just going to be a waste of everyone's time. The last thing to remember is that you can change your mind. I think the first time that you submit your options is months and months and months before results day. You have so much time to think things through and change your mind if you want to. And obviously on enrollment day and results day, a lot of people are going to have to change their A-levels anyway, depending on whether they got the grade requirements or not. But even after that, in my school, we were allowed to change our options up until the half term of year 12, like the first half term. And I know that will be different for other schools. You will definitely have an opportunity to switch once you start year 12. You know, if you have done a week of that subject and you decide actually you really don't enjoy it, then you can switch still. So it's not kind of this final thing of once I pick, I can't change and I have to do that for the rest of the 2 years. You actually have many opportunities to change your mind in the meantime. So yeah, that's all the advice I have to give. Good luck if you are making those decisions. I know it can be so nerve-wracking and stressful because it feels like you're deciding your future, but I think sometimes it is made to be a bigger thing than it actually is. I think at the end of the day, just listen to yourself and you'll know when the time comes. I think just do what feels right. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope that the advice was somewhat helpful and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.